Hello, greetings, and welcome to today's lesson. My name is Felicia Ndlovu, and today we'll be looking at the topic understanding sexual interest under life orientation. Now, just a few basic rules before we begin with the lesson. Remember to always put on your facial mask, ensure that it covers both your mouth and your nose so as to protect you from COVID. Rule number 2, ensure that you're paying attention in the lesson. Engage with the lesson, ask questions, make notes. Don't just simply be a spectator. Right. So, under the topic, understanding sexual interest, we are going to be exploring number 1 because the topic actually entails 2 subtopics. Now, the first topic is we're going to first explore the social and emotional changes in puberty. And then we're also going to differentiate between misconceptions, myths, and facts related to sexual interest and safer sex. So, when we grow as human beings and we become adults eventually, at least all of us, I hope, we experience a range of physical, emotional, as well as social changes, when we move from puberty towards adulthood. Now, these physical changes can sometimes make us feel self-conscious and affect our self-esteem. Now, this doesn't always have to be the case, because when we have empathy and we support each other, we can make that transition from adolescence to adulthood a much more positive experience for us all. Knowledge is potential power. I know that the saying is normally knowledge is power, but I like to think of knowledge as potential power. It only becomes power when you actually start to utilize, when you actually start to use it. So when we have correct information about sexual interests and feelings, we can better protect our own well-beings and the well-beings of the people that we are in romantic relationships with. There are many myths, however, that surround sexual interest and also surround safer sex. And we normally come across these when we are talking with our friends, or when we watch movies, or when we watch music videos, or sometimes even when we watch pornography. And the media plays a really big part in these misconceptions because it creates very unrealistic images about sex and about sexual interests and about safe sex. So when we understand those misconceptions, then we develop our capacity of critical thinking. We can have more self-confidence and we protect our own well-being. And this includes protecting ourselves from negative peer pressure and also unhealthy relationships, because sometimes we get exposed to these media platforms through our friends. So if you want to have a healthy relationship, and this is just a key point. If you want to have a healthy relationship, communication is very important. Sharing your thoughts and your feelings with your partner can be a wonderful way of building intimacy, affection, and making decisions, as well as having fun together. So the whole purpose of this lesson, in a nutshell, is to make sure that you understand that as human beings, we change. As human beings, we grow. Throughout puberty, we change and we grow to become adults. And when we grow, one of the changes that occur in our bodies, in our emotions, and in our social lives have all to do with sexual interest and eventually sex. And you need to have the correct information so that you can make conscious decisions. Right. So basically, our lesson outcomes are, for one, you just have to be able to explain what physical, social, and emotional changes are, and then 2, you have to be able to differentiate between what is factual and what is an opinion regarding sexual interest and sex. Right. So physical changes have all to do with hormones. They have all to do with the things that we can physically see changing about a person, that being increased growth rates, bodily proportions, secondary sex or gender characteristics. That's where we see your breasts are getting bigger. For the ladies, they have curves. For the boys, the penis and the testes are getting bigger. They have acne on the face. We see primary changes in the body as well, such as menstruation, ovulation, and acne. Like I said, so changes in your face. Some skin becomes oilier. And then we also have emotional changes. Now, these are changes that are occurring in our emotions and our feelings. we get to see that people start to have a maturing personality. You find that whatever used to interest you while you were younger does not interest you anymore. There's depth of control, emotions, feelings of insecurity, changing needs, interests, beliefs, values, and eventually the big one, sexual interests. Because now you start to have feelings. Now you start to find certain people attractive. Now you start liking people and telling them how you feel and possibly pursuing a romantic relationship with them. Then the last change that occurs to people, that occurs to us in adolescence, that occurs to you guys in puberty, is social changes. Social changes meaning your relationship with your family changes, your interaction with groups, your need for acceptance by and dependence on your peer group. I remember when I was still in high school, me and my friends used to call ourselves the dope and fabulous chicks. We started giving each other names and we started dressing differently, and we wanted to do some things, that were making us cool, at least back in those days. And that wasn't a very long time, by the way. But you start to change as a person socially. And then eventually there is also social changes when you start moving into the workforce and you start having increased responsibilities. This, however, is not very prevalent in adolescence, but you do get that some people in your age, and maybe this might be you as well, that you're now having a job, that you're now helping your mother work at the store or whatever. You start having responsibilities. Now, since you're a girl and you're having menstruation, now you have to take care of yourself, of your body, so that you're always hygienically clean and all of those things. Yes, so now I want us to move to the second segment of our lesson, and that is the myths and the facts concerning sexual interest and safer sex. And I actually want to start the second segment with a short comic, and I'm just going to put it here so that you can see the comic. But it's basically about a girl and a guy, and the guy is saying to the girl, "Come on, Esther, you can't get pregnant from your first time." And this is a statement that I think a lot of people might have heard. The boy is telling the girl that, no, don't worry about it. You will not get pregnant from the first time you're having sex. And from the onset, you can actually tell that that is actually not true. And I'll tell you why. Because the boy is actually implying that if they have sex now, and it's because it's the girl's first time possibly, she will not fall pregnant. Okay. So, myths and facts. Let's start by understanding the difference between the two terms. So myths are actually wild-held but false beliefs or ideas. So for example, when we say cows can live underwater, no, they can't. So it is a myth. Although some people do not believe it, some might come with false evidence and say, yeah, well, I come from a village where we saw a cow living underwater, and we all know that that is not scientifically true. And then the fact, ladies and gentlemen, is a thing that is known or proven to be true. For example, when we say we need oxygen to live, that is proven, that is true. There's scientific evidence actually backing up. If you did not have oxygen, you would most likely die, and we've seen that happen. At least researchers have, right? So what I'm going to do for this segment of the exercise is that I'm just going to go through a list of sentences. I just have like 4 statements, and I want us to look at them and actually discern from which is a myth and which is a fact. So this is my first statement, and my first statement is saying that people with disabilities or special needs do not have sexual interest or enjoy intimacy. Is that a myth or a fact? Well, this, ladies and gentlemen, is a myth. People with special needs do have sexual interest, and they do also enjoy intimacy. So that is a myth. Another sentence tells us that you can't get pregnant if you have sex in a bath or when you are standing up. That, again, it is a myth. People have fallen pregnant while they had sex while standing up, and they have fallen pregnant from having sex in the bath. Now, you might also notice something, and this might not really be academic, but you might have noticed that most of the myths, they just generally don't really make sense. You know, they are not like paradoxical statements. They just don't make sense. But some people actually do believe them. And my job is to help you guys dissect, discern, differentiate, distinguish between what is true and what is not. Let's look at the third statement. Now, the third statement tells us that drinking alcohol or using drugs aren't good when it comes to sex. Now, this, ladies and gentlemen, is a big fact, because when people are under the influence of drugs and alcohol, they are more likely to not be in control of what they're doing. And by that, I mean their emotions. And then they end up engaging in risky sexual behaviors, which might lead to unwanted pregnancy, catching STIs, and sometimes even HIV and AIDS. And then the last and final statement is, a person with a cold soul who performs oral sex cannot infect the partner with genital herpes. Now, oral sex, if you all might already know, is basically sexual activity in which the genitals of one partner are stimulated by the other partner. So this is a myth. Definitely false. There is scientific evidence showing that you can actually give somebody genital herpes just from performing oral sex. Now, you might be asking, okay, ma'am, so we have learned about the social changes that we go through, the physical changes that we go through, and the emotional changes that we go through. Now, ma'am, I understand the misconception. I understand how to tell if something is a myth and when it is a fact. But what should be my overall take from the lesson? And that is a very good question. The overall take from the lesson is this. Take what you are learning and apply it. Like I said in the beginning of the lesson, knowledge is potential power. It is not power. It only becomes power when you start to use it, when you start to utilize it. So now that we have reached the end of our lesson, I really do hope that you enjoyed it and you found it very informative and very fruitful. Now, from me, your life orientation teacher, Ms. Felicia Ndlovu, I'm out.